The Cubs acquiring an interesting pitcher with a lot of upside and a lot of question marks. So for those of you, of course, who've not really seen the details of the deal, just to review, the Cubs acquire right-handed pitcher Edward Cabrera from the Miami Marlins for 3 hitting prospects, most notably Owen Casey, an outfielder who made his major league debut in 2025, and 2 lower-level players, Christian Hernandez and Edgardo De Leon. But we're going to focus on Cabrera and Casey in this conversation. And I think that, as I mentioned, like, you spent a lot of time thinking and talking and writing and yapping about pitching. And Edward Cabrera is just like the perfect kind of pitcher for modern pitching discourse, right? For so many reasons. There's so many things going on with him that could make you love him or hate him. And so let's get into the positives, right? We are going to get into some reasons for either skepticism or concern, but let's stay positive here. Why would any team, because apparently a lot of teams were interested in trading for Edward Cabrera, what is exciting about this pitcher?
The stuff. Yeah, it's the stuff. I mean, we've heard this term a ton. You're comboing up, release, and velo, and how the ball moves, and coming up with like a singular number to grade the guy's ability to miss bats, which is one of the most predictive things for success. So that's it. Like, he does a really good job of this. And Foul Territory was joking about me. They were like, is he the smartest kid in the dumb school? Because like the Cubs don't have a lot of stuff. And I was like, I think he's a smart kid in that school, but also he's cool if you send him to like Stanford. He can like get B's there. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So I think he's a great pitcher. Like, he creates nasty breaking ball shapes. He's got a hard fastball. He's got this wacky changeup that's really hard. And I think the big thing to notice is like year over year, he finally improved the walk rate. This is huge. Like, I think this is sticky. I don't think the prior Marlins regime did a great job of optimizing his usage. And I think there's like a variety of ways you can improve command, although all of them are like kind of, no one's going to be like, I can totally get this guy's command better. But I'd say the most reliable way to do it is to get the guy on a pitch that he can zone more and is more comfortable throwing. They lowered his slot, or his slot fell. I don't think it was intentional from what I've been talking to people about. So the slot falls, the sinker gets a little better from a quality standpoint, and they go, hey, throw that thing a bunch because you're actually better at zoning it than your four seam. You see four seam come down versus lefties and righties, sinker shoot up, throwing more breaking balls. All of a sudden, the walk rate's at 8% with a potential for like a high 20 strikeout rate. I mean, it's really easy to project him as like an impact, let's say like 2 or 3 in a rotation. I don't think he's ace level. You know, I don't think he's a square 2. Like, he's probably in that 2-3 window. He's a really good pitcher. Really fun stuff.
Yeah, and especially in relation to, as you kind of joked about earlier, but it is relevant, the other pitchers in the Cubs rotation, right? And why they were seeking rotation upgrades to begin with. You know, where exactly he slots in is probably also going to depend on how those other pitchers are pitching, but also how he does. I think what's fun to me about Cabrera is, you know, if you follow Lance, you read his work, you watch his YouTube videos, or not just Lance, right? Like, a lot of people now in the pitching analysis space, whether we're talking about stuff plus models and just how we're grading pitches, sometimes it's not actually obvious what you're watching. Maybe you're watching a pitcher and you're reading that someone like Lance or Saris is being like, this guy has his stuff plus, he loves his curveball or loves his slider, and you watch the guy and you're like, okay, I don't really get it. Not an issue with Edward Cabrera. And this is true for a lot of guys that throw really hard. But if you tune into an Edward Cabrera start where he's got his stuff going, it's very obvious that this guy can create some really incredible just aesthetic shapes. Forget what exactly the StatCast is telling you about what it's moving. I mean, just watch, right? Just watch the curveball. Just watch the changeup that averages 94 miles an hour. Just watch 2 different fastballs that, when he is zoning them, can be really effective. I want to talk about that sinker, though, because as you mentioned, that clearly helped him get back in the zone and lower a walk rate that had been over 10% for his entire career. The other thing about Edward Cabrera, we talk about what has prevented him from reaching his potential. We're going to talk about the injuries in a second because that's very relevant in terms of the sample size. But this is a long time of having big stuff. This dude hit 100 when he was a teenager. That was almost a decade ago. And as you mentioned, the Marlins regime, the Marlins have also developed a lot of pitchers. It took a really, really long time for him to finally put it all together. And you can say that that's maybe a good thing or a bad thing based on how much he improved in 2025. But the reason why I bring up that sinker is because people in this space will also point to that pitch and be like, well, hey, if I pull up on StatCast and I look at how these pitches performed, that sinker's getting crushed. That fastball is still not performing well, right? So when you look at the mix, beyond just moving away from a four-seamer that he clearly could not command at all, what else could you maybe and knowing the tendencies of how the Cubs like to optimize pitchers, what are some other things you could maybe see with them? If he can, stay on the mound and make 30 starts, what are some other tweaks to the pitch mix that you could see kind of elevating his overall performance?
Yeah, I'll speak to this sans Cubs for a second, then I'll incorporate the Cubs perspective because I think it's two different things. And talking to people, the obvious two angles here is there's probably a sweeper in here if he wants it, and there's probably a cutter of some kind. So we're getting to this trend. We saw it a ton last year. David Adler had a really good piece in MLB.com about it. Just everyone's throwing more pitches. And we're understanding so much about seam effects and how airflow around the ball can influence movement that every dude can throw 6 pitches, especially if you're able to get to the side of the ball relatively well and have high spin capacity and cut the ball a little bit, which Cabrera can do a little. So in that respect, you can push him to a cut in a sweep. I actually think he threw a cutter a couple times. I haven't been able to back check it. I was talking to someone that said that he threw it in an outing a couple times. So it's there. He's thrown it. Perhaps that's something you could just elevate and push up. The interesting part of this is that the Cubs last year had the highest four-seam fastball usage in all of Major League Baseball. They also had the highest 3-2 strike zone rate. They are a count leverage team that is comfortable throwing things directly in the zone and giving up barrels because at Wrigley Field, a lot of those times, those barrels don't get out. It's a philosophical thing that I believe I don't know if they've explicitly said, but you can read between the lines and look at every single one of their starting pitchers.
Yeah, and
it's
also,
pretty obvious.
When your defense is this good and when PCA can run down, blistering line drives into the gap because you threw a fastball down the middle, I know that's sort of simplifying things, but pitching and defense,
true.
It's a not just pitching and defense, it's pitching plus defense, right? It's not the pitching has been designed to work in tandem with the defense in a lot of respects.
I think so.
And the
100%. I agree entirely. I think that's, and they do it really well. It's not a critique. It's just, it's a differentiator. It's something that's different about them, which I always love pointing out. With Cabrera, he would be by far the lowest four-seam sink combined. Combine those two usages together. How much do you throw those pitches? He's around, I think, 35% last year. Pretty much every single Cub starter the last 3 years is 55% or greater, as long as you play with the classification on cutters. Like all these dudes just rip fastballs in the zone, they're trying to get ahead. So I'm fascinated to see what the Cubs do specifically with Cabrera, because I think perhaps if I had to bet, I would say the four seam and sink usage combined goes up slightly. But I would hope that they push towards the cut and the sweep and really get the mix bigger alongside that, such that you start to turn him into we could get his walk rate down to 7% or 6.5% because he's actually even in zone more now to pre-2K because of what he's mixing. From a fastball standpoint, we're having him throw a little more than 35%. There's also the other, if he went to the Red Sox, who I think were a team that was roughly interested in him, he would throw 0 fastball. This dude would be throwing 55% slider in all accounts, So it's interesting to see his fit on the Cubs and think about that relative to other teams.
And so, by the way, also, this is a big part of acquiring a pitcher with 3 years of team control, right? Maybe it doesn't all come together in 2026, but you can still work with him and understand what he is capable of and what's working and what pitchers maybe he does have more command over if you are going to, up the usage of them. We're going to get to the durability here in a second because that is very important.
We're getting there.
But the last thing on his pitch mix, and it's funny you mentioned, the Red Sox, they just have him throw all secondaries or more sliders, more sweepers. The pitch that I sort of mentioned, but again, is if you just go in and what he has been doing, what has been succeeding, it's the changeup and the curveball, right? If you just look at what has performed the best, it's the changeup and the curveball. The curveball in particular has been one of the most effective curveballs in baseball. So are you saying adjust the curveball to make it more sweepy or adjust the slider to make it more sweepy? And why is his curveball so good? I mean, you watch it, it's pretty nasty, right? But that's also a pitch that we just see less of now. There's just not, and that is a pitch usage-wise that has gone down in general across the league. So why is it worked for him? And how could you see a curveball maybe working in tandem with the sweeper? And then also the changeup, which was literally his most used pitch this past year. Where do you see that kind of factoring in?
Yeah, I think sweeper would be on top of the other breaking balls. This gets to my point about everyone can now probably throw 5 or 6 pitches and be really good. The curveball is really good simply because of the combination of, I would say the simple way to look at this is just how hard is the guy throwing it and how much movement is he creating? So you have to understand a little bit about pitch movement here. You could go to Savant and they have those plots and stuff. Usually what happens is as velo jumps, the ball has less time to move. So the way we measure movement is just kind of contracts. So a lot of the time when a dude throws 100, we're never I love that fastball shape. It's more just he throws 100 and the fastball shape's good. It's well, yeah, the ball doesn't have time to create those 20 inches of Justin Verlander break. So With a curveball, think about it, it's just kind of inverted. It's like as that curveball gets harder, it tends to tighten up. But his average movement profile in his curveball is greater than the average curveball at like 80 miles per hour. His is 84. So like that is crazy. You know what I mean? Like you're adding 4 miles per hour and then you're not even taking away movement. You're not shortening up the shape. You're actually extending the shape. I think it has an inch more drop and an inch more sweep than your average curveball. And it's 4 miles per hour harder. Like that, in the most basic sense, is how like the OG stuff models worked. We've gotten into the land of like angles and a lot more variance and makes them a little less interpretable. But the basic ones from a while ago were literally just, what's the release point? What's the velo? What's the movement? Here's a number. And as a result, that curveball is going to be like plus by like every model, all the old models. Maybe the new models are a little more suspect on. It's very similar to Boz's curveball, actually. His is like 85, a little more verticality, but same idea. It's got a lot of drop and it's 85. So that is like why the curveball is really good. The changeup's good because it's like a weird pitch. He actually like hikes his slot a bit, which I feel like in my head makes some sense, but I also hear much more about dudes like lowering slot to create more of that like disco ball change. But he hikes his slot, and I think that's why he's able to throw it harder, and it has sinker-esque shape, just at literally like almost the same velo as his sinker. It's really hard to explain that pitch. The curveball is far easier to explain, but the change of just watch the hitter reaction, right? Like the hitters are just like swinging right through it, and you're like, it just kind of looks okay to me, but it's 96 and it misses bats.
And the guy that was really throwing changeups like that first caught my attention was his now former teammate Sandy. I remember 2 or 3 years ago when Sandy Alcantara was really popping, and he was pumping 100, but like he was dropping in changeups at 93, 94. And it was just like, what in the world? Like, what?
The Marlins were great at this. I just think they were a little like close-minded on it, where it's like, that is all we can do. And it's like, cool. But you have these other pitchers that are like, like Vesia goes to the Dodgers and is better, and Gallen. And there's so many other instances where they just missed on guys because they were like, throw a power change. And he's like, I can't. And they're like, go, get out of here.
So we will, again, there's plenty more to talk about where the Marlins go from here from a pitching standpoint. But you mentioned Shane Baz there. And I have also just been thinking about him, right? Because we saw the return that Tampa got for him. Both of these guys, I mean, Baz is about a year younger, maybe a little less than a year younger than Cabrera. But you compare these two guys over the last 2 years, and it's a very similar workload, and Cabrera's arguably been better. Baz just made it through a full season healthy. Now, he also has his own injury history, right? But let's talk about the red flags with Cabrera, right? Because if you are wondering maybe why he didn't get as much as Baz in return, although we can talk about how Casey's value being closer to the big leagues is probably a big part of that compared to the 4 A-ball players that the Rays got plus the draft pick. I do think that with Cabrera, and when you compare him to Baz, by the way, the other thing about him too is, right, is like, yes, he just had a good, interesting season, but you're also projecting a lot. You're seeing this stuff and you're saying, oh, what can we do with him, right? That's what Baltimore's saying. Now, in both of these cases, it's kind of funny because both the Marlins and Rays have generally had success developing pitchers in different respects, in slightly different ways. Obviously, the Cubs and Orioles think they can get more out of them. Back to Cabrera's elbow / shoulder / whatever else is going on with him. While, yes, you can say, hey, well, wait a minute. Yeah, he had an elbow sprain in September, but he came back. He pitched at the end of the season. When we talk about medical records, okay, you have to go through, teams have to approve the medicals. Sometimes that's a very opaque process. And when you're looking at a player's injury history based on how many times he's been on the injury list, you're like, well, what are we talking about here? Like, this is kind of more behind the scenes stuff that we are not always privy to as journalists, but also just as fans, right? In this case, there's no secret. Edward Cabrera has missed a lot of time, has been on the injured list multiple times for both elbow and shoulder injuries in 4 consecutive years, right? It was basically since he debuted in 21, it was elbow in 22, shoulder in 23, shoulder in 24, and then again elbow in 25. He's never, he just set a career high in innings, which is encouraging. I mean, listen, when we talk about predicting future injury, it's clearly a fickle beast, but also what you hear is past injury predicts future injury more than as much as we can. Add in the context of a year ago, the Cubs spiking a trade with this same team, the Marlins, reportedly to acquire Jesus Luzardo, who goes on to have a fully healthy, successful season with the Phillies. That does not mean that Edward Cabrera is about to get hurt or that he's about to throw 300 innings. But
that'd be crazy.
That would be something. But I bring all that to mention, just like, what have you heard about this? And do you sense that this has kind of factored into the calculus for maybe both teams in this decision to make this trade?
To answer your question, I think it is. It's a particularly weird spot because we have literal reports that he has a sprain in his UCL from last September. Like, it's out there. It's on MLB.com, the league's website. It says he sprained his UCL, which is a tear. Sprain is a tear, which people often miss up. How quickly those things heal? How is it a precursor to anything? Like, I have no clue. What I'm going off of is the fact that in talking to people, not in either of these organizations, the league was a little bit hesitant around the medicals with him. I'm not saying like those individuals like looked at the medicals, because it always seems like it happens once the trade gets far enough down the road or is like accepted and blah, blah, blah. But you got to read between the lines here. Like, the Yankees were like gonna get him and then poof. And the Cubs were like gonna get him. Then we had like a 4-hour wait yesterday where it was just like, I was calling people, trying to text people like, is this happening? What's the return? I was like, I kind of had the return. I was like, I need to get it confirmed. Did you tell the guys? Because I don't want to be like tweeting that Owen Casey's gone, and he's like, no. I haven't been told yet. You know,
well,
it's
also, Owen Casey, we're gonna get to in a second. But also, it's funny because you're like, am I about to be really busy for the rest of the week because the Cubs are traded?
My day was shot yesterday, and I didn't even accomplish anything yesterday. I just like was sitting there like waiting for people to text me, wondering if like, maybe I have a scoop here. This is cool. I don't usually get these. But
all that said, I do think it is an important point here, right? Because you might say, well, he came back and pitched. What's the big deal?
Exactly.
I think something that we've learned, though, in recent years with elbow injuries is like, one, there's clearly a huge range of pain tolerance for all kinds of pitchers. And there are often times where we just find out that guys have just been pitching through this for either entire seasons or full seasons. And so it's like, the fact that he came back and made 2 starts is by no means telling me that he's okay. It tells me something, because clearly they didn't say you need to have surgery right now, which in theory could have been something that happened, right? And sometimes would have been, right? So like, in some ways we'll say we'll never know, but this is an undeniable part of this story that does not require any sort of behind-the-scenes information, because his history is what it is. And
that's why we're talking about it. If this was not something that was ever reported, I would never remotely bring this up. Like, it's just like, I don't care. Like, to me, medical stuff is like a Rorschach test.
100%.
Like, it seems like anybody could look at it from a medical team in any organization and flag something they don't like. These dudes are throwing 97 miles per hour. Right. Everyone hurts. Everyone's broken in some respect. But the fact that we have a verified sprain from him last year, and we're only like 4 months removed from that, I think went into the calculus. I can't confirm this, but yeah, again, reading between the lines, reading the tea leaves, it had to have gone into the calculus on the Cubs side for the risk tolerance in this situation. You know, if you think back to when they were discussing this right around the deadline, which is right around when this injury happened, I wonder if the ask was higher. Like, maybe the name that I heard the Cubs were not really willing to part with in a variety of iterations of deals, I don't know if it was specifically the Cabrera one, was Jackson Wiggins. They didn't want to give up this big righty they have that is by far the best pitching prospect in their org. You could argue literally like the only pitching prospect in their organization. They didn't want to part with him. They didn't want to part with him for anybody, whether it be Joe Ryan or Mike Hensiger or any of these other guys. From my understanding, the packages being proposed were all like Wiggins is the name we're a little bit hesitant on because we don't have any other pitching. So maybe the ask went from Wiggins, Casey down to just Casey and these peripheral pieces. You know, like I really don't know exactly, but like you have to wonder what the negotiations look like at the deadline and what they look like these last 3 days before this trade happened, and whether that injury caused the package to drop a little. It's definitely a factor in this one, man.
Yes.
Like this isn't something that you can just gloss over. Like we were talking about the draft. The draft is the worst with medicals, to the point where last year, if you noticed, I did some stuff for MLB Network. I picked all the dudes who were hurt because I was like, listen, no one can tell me anything about these medicals. Every team has a different opinion. Gage Wood, Riley Quick, like, you know what? I don't care. They throw absolute shed and have awesome shapes. I'm betting on them. And everyone's like, well, you're picking all the injured guys. And I was like, do you know they're injured? No one can tell me whether they're injured. So like that stuff I'm going to stay away from entirely. But again, we're going back to the point where like we have it. He's got a sprain. The UCL's torn. How long can he pitch with it? I have absolutely no idea. Can he magically heal it in an offseason? Perhaps he can. Like, we got to keep Keith Meister on here or something. Like, I don't know
when we
how
talk
you
about, probably not. It would be an interesting podcast.
Probably not, maybe.
I will say, and listen, That's probably not a pitcher you'll want to trade for if he's got a year of club control left, right? But
exactly. That's
part
a great
of the
point.
calculus
Yes.
might be the Cubs saying, you know what, maybe he does need elbow surgery in March. And while the optics would be terrible if he immediately gets hurt, undeniably, they still can say, you know what, he could come back at the end of 27.
Correct.
So on, so on. So anyway,
I think that's 100% in it for the Cubs.
That also has to be part of this, right?
Absolutely.
All that said, well, as we close here with you here in a few minutes, they did trade a pretty important prospect for them in Owen Casey.
They did, yeah.
A player who not only is like highly ranked and has a lot of minor league success, was projected to maybe play an important role on their major league team in 2026. And now he is a Miami Marlin, joining a very fun young outfield with Jacob Marcy, Kyle Stowers, two other trade acquisitions.
Yep.
For the
Bendix
Marlins,
cooking, man. Bendix's league.
who have flourished with the Fish. Having followed Owen Casey, again, we don't have to go too deep on him, but because he is the important part of this deal, like with all due respect to Hernandez and De Leon, who might turn into something but have a lot to prove, Casey is like, this is a belief that Owen Casey can be a big part of the Marlins, also not just right now, but like a part of their solution as they look to add more offense. Having followed him and following Cub prospects, what's your optimism level for Owen Casey moving forward?
Yeah, I think he's good. I think that if you're asking me which of the two I would rather trade between an Owen Casey and a Moises Ballesteros, I think I would trade Mo, because I just don't think the positional versatility there lends itself to putting up large WAR numbers. Now, I do think Moises Ballesteros is a better hitter presently. So if you're asking me in the next 2 years who provides more WRC plus, it's probably Moises Ballesteros. The problem is that I don't see Ballesteros not DHing at the major league level. Casey can play right field. I think he's got a decent arm. He's pretty mobile out there. He's improved that, I think, in the last couple of years as well. The big thing is just he impacts the ball really hard. Like, this is just exit velocity stuff. Like, he looks great in those metrics, swings really hard. The K rate's going to be high. The big thing, we're going back to like the calculus point, maybe around like why the Cubs would do this trade. If they don't think he ever comes out of platoon land, then yeah, like that's a limited profile, If he's like an average defender and he just can never hit lefties, so you just always end up subbing him out, like, yeah, it's not that great of a player. So, like, even if he hits like 35 homers or like a 30% strikeout rate and he plays average defense and he plays 110 games, let's say, gets like 450 plate appearances, like, I think 140 innings Edward Cabrera is surpassing that if Cabrera is like healthy and on the mound and looks remotely like he does. So, like, that calculus I get, But I do think Owen Casey's good. I think he will be an impact bat on that team for an extended period of time. Maybe it takes a little for him to warm in, and if he never gets out of platoon land, I still think he could be a pretty good hitter. So I like him. I think he was tough to part with. And he was, to me, the logical Kyle Tucker replacement. Like, you don't have him, your probability of being a top 10 offense is not good. Like, I think they were the 8th best offense last year by some metrics. Or I was looking at the Blue Jays and I saw the Cubs right next to them. So they were in that vicinity of top 10. I think it's hard to project the Cubs as a top 10 offense right now. I just don't really see it. Like, you need Tucker. You had a bunch of health last year. You had really, really good seasons from Michael Busch and Seiya Suzuki. Now Seiya Suzuki's playing 150 games in right field at present, and you can't guarantee the health of everybody else. Like, does Pete have another April, May, half of June in him that looked like last year, or is it more stable production? Like, there's a lot. I think this offense is good. It's not a bad offense, but it posting top 5 numbers for months on end is predicated a bit, I think, on Tucker being in there and health. So I'm waiting to see what the next move is here. Like, I don't know what it is. I know they're linked on Bregman. That makes a lot of sense. My gut is the Red Sox are just going to outbid whoever is even remotely close to the price range. Bellinger reunion makes sense. Yankees, Heyman said that's the Yankees' number 1 target. Reunion with Tucker is unlikely. So, like, there's no other impact bat that gets them, that claws back what they just lost in Casey. Perhaps they think Seiya and Wright by Steros at DH is a better offense, which I roughly agree with. But again, we're a year removed from them saying they don't want Seiya in right field all the time. And what happened last year? He didn't play right field. He was an incredible hitter for like the entire season. It worked. Like, literally what they wanted worked. So now you're putting him back out there. I struggle a little with assuming he's as good of a hitter. You put him back on his feet for 150 games. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm a little bit skeptical that's the outcome we're gonna.
You're asking all the right. You're asking all the right questions, and that's why I have nothing to add, because there is a lot of offseason left, and we will see if they have another move to make an offense.